in Charlotte. So it's my great pleasure at this point to introduce our keynote speaker, my friend Taiwo Jaiyeoba. Charlotte's city government had lacked a planning director for more than 3 years when Taiwo Jaiyeoba took the reins in January 2018. He assumed the leadership of the department at a time when Charlotte development continues to boom and the city is behind on the effort to overhaul its zoning and land use regulations into a comprehensive plan known as a Unified Development Ordinance, or a UDO. Taiwo has 27 years of experience in planning, managing, and major land use and transit studies, with capital projects both in the United States and internationally. His previous work included Executive Director of Planning and Development in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Director of Project Management and Director of Planning in Sacramento, California. During his tenure as Planning Director for Grand Rapids, Michigan, he managed the state's first ever bus rapid transit project, and he helped to push a referendum to fund it. A native of Nigeria, Taiwo moved to the United States from Botswana in 1996, which would be the same year that I got to start working with the Women in Transition program. He describes himself as a planning geek who likes to ride trains and buses for fun. His family moved to Charlotte in 2015, and he and his wife, Ronke, are the proud parents of 7 daughters. I know. Pray for them. Taiwo deeply believes that planning should involve the full community, and to that end, community engagement is truly one of his top priorities. We are so fortunate to have him in this leadership role in Charlotte. It is my great pleasure to introduce Taiwo Jaiyeoba.
I'm good. Good afternoon, everyone. See, she forgot that I also have a male dog, a Maltese. So I was having an interview the other day, and I told the lady that my wife and I have 7 daughters, and I have a male dog. And she said, what kind of dog? I said, Maltese. And she said, no, it doesn't count. Well, good afternoon again, everyone. I have the pleasure of being, at least, the opportunity to be able to say one more time this month, Happy Black History Month. And that's very personal, and that's very important to me. So, Kirsten, thank you so much. I think our relationship has evolved into friendship. She was one of the first people I got to meet when I moved here in 2015. And we really appreciate the work that the YWCA is doing. I really want to say thank you to the board, thank you to the staff. Eliminating racism and empowering women, it's not an easy mission, but it is the right one. You do translate people's dreams to realities on a daily basis, and I really want to appreciate that. As a city's chief planner, I often wonder how I can be of help to make sure that we make that dream happen. So thank you to everyone for coming here today. I'll share a couple of things with you quickly. So I started about a year ago, and recently people have been asking me 2 questions for the most part, a lot of questions, but 2 for the most part. The first one is, are you still liking it? And the good news is, yes, I am. I'm loving it. No one has said to me yet, bless your heart. So I think that's a good thing. The second question I get asked is, what keeps you up at night? No, it's not the 7 girls. But I tell you what keeps me up at night, though, is how, as the chief planner for the city, we can translate our prosperity into upward mobility for people every day, whether through our regulations or through the way we see the city. So I'm going to spend a few minutes today to talk to you about our comprehensive plan, Charlotte Future 2040, and also about our Unified Development Ordinance. One is vision, the other is regulation. So my hope at the end of the day is that I turn all of you into citizen planners. Don't worry, you'll be all right. And I bet that there's a lot of you here today that's also what keeps you up at night. How do we translate a business-friendly city into a more people-friendly city, if you know what I mean by that? But before I go into that, I want to share with you my personal story. So, I grew up in Nigeria. My father was a university professor. My mom is a retired nurse, and one of 7 children. So that tells you where those 7 kids came from. But in 1992, I moved to Botswana to work for the government as a planner. That's just north of South Africa. And about the same time, Nelson Mandela was released. Right about that time, in 1996, I moved to the United States. Growing up in Nigeria, though, I saw the world through the lens of neighborhood. It was always about who are the people in your neighborhood, the people that you meet each day. Sesame Street. So when you heard that I described myself as a Sesame Kid Street, that's where I got that from. And as a matter of fact, not only was it a theme song, it was also something that we experienced every day. Your neighbors are likely going to give you a free ride on the side of the road if they know who you are. So that face-to-face encounter, that connection, that ability to know people, not just by name, by face, but really to get to know their children and their family, provided a safe and secure environment for us growing up. So it didn't really matter the end of the spectrum that you were in, whether you were poor or you were rich or you were in the middle of the road, you felt safe, you felt secure. Affordable housing wasn't just about the building, it was also about how to get to places within walking distance. So if you don't have a car, at least you have a footpath to get you where you need to go, or at least that friendly neighbor will give you a ride. So in 1992, after I finished my master's degree, of course, in Nigeria, I moved to Botswana. Now, every child in Nigeria, at one point or the other, will experience tribalism because there's just a whole lot of tribes. And the first time I will ever experience racism was in South Africa. I remember wanting to use the bathroom, and I was told to go to a bathroom that was labeled for blacks and coloreds only. Or going to the post office, and where you were told to move to the longer line because that was really the line for the blacks and coloreds. That was my first encounter with racism. It was in Pretoria, South Africa. And that totally gave me a very different mindset of what racism was. But in 1996, armed with my green card, I came to the United States, wanted to see if I could get a job. So applied for a job in Sacramento. And I had no family, no friends in Sacramento, but the very first person I got to know was a Hispanic American who became a friend. And once again, gave me a different perspective on diversity in the United States. So my experience in moving to Sacramento is kind of similar to Jenny's experience when you first moved to Charlotte with a suitcase and you had to find accommodation at the YWCA. For me, it wasn't the YWCA, it was the Habitat for Humanity. I had no job yet, and with a stipend of about $500, they gave me a shared accommodation with another family. That's where I lived for quite a while. It wasn't a middle-class neighborhood. There were military vets there. There were people from Mexico, from Southeast Asia, from the Ukraine. I still remember very well that address, 7600 Sullivan Drive, North Islands, California. It was the place where I actually started. It gave me that transition opportunity. But you know why it was a bit easier? Because 2 blocks away was a bus line. Just kitty corner from the place was a grocery store. And so everything I needed, including church, was just within 10 minutes distance of that place. So it wasn't 500 in California will never do anything. But when you have everything else around you, it actually stretched a lot. Eventually, when I got a job several months later, I bought a house about a year later. Guess where I bought a house? That same neighborhood. Again, who are the people in your neighborhood? The people that you see and you feel safe and secure with each day. So bought a house in the neighborhood. I still remember we bought it for less than $80,000, a down payment of about $2,700, and my monthly for a 3 bedrooms, 2 bathroom house was $800. Didn't you like that? I mean, come on. It was just $800. I could even afford to not have a second job to keep that because my income was about $2,000. So, and now I got a job eventually with the city of Sacramento working as a planner there. So, these experiences have impacted the way I think about community planning. creating gathering places, interactive environments, diverse and inclusive communities where everyone can feel welcome, connected, and empowered. So it's not about what I learned in planning school that I put to the lens of what I do as a planning director, but what I have experienced in life. So we've come to a pivotal moment in our evolution as a city. Excuse me. A lot has changed about Charlotte of yesterday. I don't know how many of you know this, but about 60% of our population is minority, so it's no longer minority. And the percentage of our migrant population is 17.1%. The population of our women versus men is 52%. Almost 20 years ago, Charlotte was the 33rd largest city in the United States. Now we are the 17th largest city. We're bigger than Seattle, we're bigger than Denver, we're bigger than Boston, we're bigger than Portland, we're bigger than Nashville. And I need to correct this wrong assumption right now. People often tell me that Atlanta is bigger than Charlotte. No, it's not. Atlanta as a city is about 400 and some thousand people. It's the region of Atlanta that's 5-point-some million people. The city itself is 400 and some thousand. We, as a city, are 869,000 people. In another 20 years, we're going to add the exact population of Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the population of Charlotte. That would put us to about 1.3 million people. The question then we should be asking is, where will they live? Because these people don't come with their own houses and they don't come with their asphalt. So they don't come with their parks and they don't come with their open spaces. There's got to be a place for them to recreate. There's got to be a place for them to live. Somebody told me yesterday that a study that was just done recently showed that 50% of San Franciscans are ready to move out in the next 2 years. Guess where they're moving to? I love my job as a city planner. So, like all of those cities I just mentioned, every day we face the challenges of a growing city, such as affordable housing, economic mobility, inadequate infrastructural capacity, and of course, traffic congestion. Now, growth in itself is not a bad word, because if it is done right, if it is done in a responsible way, if it is planned right and smartly, growth can actually be a very positive thing. And that's where smart planning and responsible zoning regulations come to place. As planners, our primary purpose is to protect public interest and private investment, as well as public investment. So while we're planning for the needs of present and future generations, it's very important that we do that. People often think that the purpose of zoning is to segregate. No, the purpose of zoning is to bring about orderly development. However, our current zoning ordinance was written in 1992. And our current comprehensive plan was written in 1975. I don't know where you were in 1975, but Charlotte was a very different city then. That's the reason we need to renew our vision and then rewrite our development regulations. So, like Kirsten said, in 2016, we launched on our Unified Development Ordinance, which is really about 8 different documents that we plan to put together in one very graphically depicted document that will be very sensitive, in other words, to development, so that residents and developers can pretty much know what's going to happen in their community. What we don't often tell you is that one of those 8 documents is the zoning ordinance that was written in 1992, and it's almost 1,000 pages. So you almost have to be an expert and an attorney, probably, to understand some of those things. The fact is that a lot of the things in our zoning ordinance does not communicate very well with the other regulations, hence the need to put them in one place and make them really sensitive to the times that we're in. Zoning regulations can be the singularly most destructive thing to provision of affordable housing. Because if it's not done properly, it can prevent developers of affordable housing from making it happen, and it can also prevent people from being able to access things that should ordinarily be able to be accessible in the community. Hence the reason we're working to revise it. When I say these things, people say, yeah, Taiwo, that's easy for you to say. You live in that space every day, but what's in it for me? Why should I care? Well, let me tell you a little bit about why you should care. Because development decisions affect all of us. Every one of you got here today, you probably use a sidewalk, You probably passed a tree on your way here. You passed one or two grocery stores, probably. Some of you came from single-family homes. Some came from apartments. We all came from somewhere today. Everything you experienced between the origin and destination today was about land use decisions. If your experience was frustrating, it could be because those decisions were not sound. Could be other factors too. If your experience was great and you high-five me at the end of this, I really would like to know how great that experience was so we can translate those into other places as well. But the fact is that whether we're 8 or 18 or 82, regardless of the phase of life we're in, we're all impacted by traffic congestion, overcrowded school classrooms, community safety or lack of it, and of course, lack of affordable housing in our communities and open spaces. Charlotte is a great and progressive city, but how many of you know that 28% of our residents live within 10 minutes walk of an open space? We're one of the lowest in the country. And how many of you know that if we keep growing at the pace at which we're growing, we're going to easily become one of the most traffically congested cities in the country? And so we've got to plan right and plan well in order for us not to be Atlanta. So land use decisions. So I used to live in Atlanta, so I totally understand that. Land use decisions affect everything: economics, real estate property values, the environment, safety, mobility, social interactions. And so because development affects everything we all do, whether directly or indirectly, we should care. So now that we know that it affects all of us, I want to talk to you quickly about our comprehensive plan before I close out. In many cities across the United States, and listen to this please carefully, decades of discriminatory policies and real estate practices contributed to creating communities that are fragmented along racial and social class lines. Sadly, Charlotte has such a history, and we have well-documented and persistent barriers to social mobility. Now, the comprehensive plan process and implementation will take a crack at this, solving it. Now, it will not solve it alone, but the plan will significantly advance equity goals by setting policies that will prioritize public investment, encourage private investment, especially in neighborhoods where some built elements are missing or inadequate. So there's one thing we cannot afford to do as a city, and that is we cannot afford to hope that things will somehow change. We cannot hope that economic mobility will happen. We cannot hope that people will be equitably treated. Hope, as good as it is not a good strategy. Our plan has to be intentional, has to be deliberate. Municipalities that are similar to Charlotte have begun experimenting with solutions. It's tiny homes in Seattle. It's affordable housing funds in Philadelphia. In Denver, they have a program that allows corporations to actually buy down rents and put their employees in those places. So if apartments were like 1,500, corporations will go buy the rents down to about 700 so that their employees can actually live in there. Basically, they're contributing to affordable housing solution. Some of you have probably heard about the Minneapolis story last year. The citizens of Minneapolis, as well as their council, voted 12-1 through their comprehensive plan process to boldly confront segregation and lack of affordable housing. You know what they did? They eliminated single-family residential zoning districts throughout the city. This allows homes with multiple units, such as duplexes and triplexes, to be built where standalone homes have long existed. Every student of urban planning knows that segregation has constantly been associated with single-family housing for years. Now, advancing equity is necessary for Charlotte. Are we going to be in Minneapolis? I don't know. The answer lies with you. But I know that once we start the community engagement next week and we start talking to people, these are the types of solutions we're going to put on the table and ask people to start thinking outside the box. How do we make sure that this comprehensive plan becomes a tool that can help us to desegregate our communities and to make sure that we increase the supply of affordable housing in our community. Affordable does not have to be deplorable. It can actually be good quality, and it can actually be done well if every one of us, we have the will and the courage to make it so. The comprehensive plan can also help to plan for and mitigate the unintended consequences of planning, such as gentrification, there's that word, and involuntary displacement. So as we embark on our comprehensive plan, I want to ask you to join us on this journey. The way I tell people is this: let's make the table longer. Let's have diverse voices around the table. I'm ready to pick people up and offer free childcare just so people can be present at these community meetings. But I also know that not everybody will be able to come to community meetings. So far, we have about 200 people that have expressed interest to show up at Mount Sinai, Greater Mount Sinai, next week, Tuesday, on the west side. We also have a number of people who are going to be coming to the foundations for the Carolinas. Thank you, Katie. To be able to have a meeting there on March 6th. And so we're going to be going out to the community and meeting with people. But I also want to extend an offer to you. Call me, reach out to me and say, Taiwo, I can't make time. I don't have the time for that, but can you come over and talk to my staff and I? We keep doing that. Last year alone, we had 235 meetings. And some of those meetings were going into people's offices just to tell them what comprehensive plan is about and how we need to take bold initiative. If 50% of San Franciscans are moving here in the next few years, we better be ready for that. And so it's very important for me to hear from you. Our goal as part of a comprehensive plan is to make sure that we meet at least 1% of our population face to face. That may sound small, but 1% of 869,000 is not a small number. We've never done that before. The plan is to do that. And that's aside from the number of people that will reach through social media and when you invite me out to come to your organization to speak. Again, this is your future. It's going to be your plan. So let's come together under a big tent, make our tables longer, and our voices diverse. In conclusion, I'll share a story with you. So when I left Botswana in 1996, I wrote in a journal that I was going to the United States and I would be the planning director of an American city. I did not think about Charlotte at that time, but I had a dream. And that dream will not have become a reality if an organization like the YWCA, in this case it was a Habitat for Humanity, that helped my transition to life in the United States. I received that assistance, and this is why I'm here today. Like Deidre, we all have a dream. For some people in our community at this very moment, that dream is to have a roof over their heads tonight, it's to secure a better job, give their children a safe environment with quality education, or avoid eviction this week. Those dreams may not become realities unless I do something or unless you do something, unless we support the mission of the YWCA. So as our city's chief planner, I intend to use the comprehensive plan to push the boundaries of what's possible. I intend to use our Unified Development Ordinance, which is the tool that will implement that vision. I intend to use that as an avenue to make us think differently and outside the box. How can I engage organizations like the YWCA and others that do similar things to make sure that individuals like Dorothy's, like the Deidras, that they have a place that they can call their own home? And I believe we can all help. I walked into my office a few weeks ago, and someone had left the book, the Lorax, on my table, and on my meeting table, and I wondered why, until I opened it, and of course, I read the famous Dr. Seuss quote, which is what I will end with. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. I come to that book every single day. I read it, and it challenges me that I have to do something different than the people who are here before me, and I have to leave a legacy behind so that people ahead of us can also build on successful legacy. So, thank you again for inviting me. Thank you everyone for coming. I'll see you out there in the neighborhoods.